to make sure, well, we get started for everybody. This is my first time meeting in the 2024 era. Post COVID, this is how you meet people. Instagram for coaches is kind of like Bumble, really. You just like, I don't like that one. I don't like that one. I do like that one.
Yeah.
You know, so, but if you'll just tell everybody who you are, what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. So my name is Chris, Coach Chris McMahon. I've been in the industry for over a decade now. I primarily work as a fat loss coach. I work with, it tends to be a lot of parents, but men, women who tend to want to lose weight and pretty much have a messed up relationship with food. So I help them get over that hump, get into this whole sustainable lifestyle sort of thing, and still be able to enjoy the stuff they love, still be able to eat ice cream, still be able to fit into the jeans that they were able to fit into pre-pandemic. So all the same stuff that a lot of the coaches do, but I think my superpower is just really, really working backwards with people, helping to get to the big, I guess it would be the big kinks in the chain, the big things that really need to be tackled in an easy, digestible way. No pun intended.
I was going to ask if you meant pun intended or no pun intended.
Yeah,
I think it's
right.
better if the pun was intended. Explain. I like to let these go organically. There are a few things that you've said recently that I did want to touch on if we have time. What do you mean by working backwards?
Oh yeah, there's a tendency to want to jump immediately and say, okay, well, this person is having a hard time hitting their calories, right? And the one thing would be all right, well, let's adjust calories, or all right, let's increase the amount of meat they're doing. All right, well, let's look at their sleep. There are all these different areas that make up a human. And if you're not able to talk with someone and actually get an idea of where they're coming from, it's really hard to pinpoint what needs to be done, what needs to be changed. And it's usually not the calories. That's usually not the issue. And it's usually not how many workouts someone's doing. It really is those minor things that keep happening on a consistent basis. So it's working back to that point and being, all right, well, what actually triggered that? What caused that to happen? Because chances are it's going to happen again. It's like the person who always eats a donut in their coffee break room at work. They could say to me, I'm not going to stress eat while I'm at work. Great. That's like me saying I'm not going to call my son cute. It's just not, it's not going to happen. You're going to be aware of it. And, for folks who do precision nutrition, like John Berardi, he has a rule that is in all the textbooks. I think it's still in the textbooks. It's the rule of delicious food. If it's in your vicinity, if you can see it, if you can smell it, if you're looking at it, chances are by the end of the day, you're going to eat that thing. And it's neither bad nor good. It's more along the lines of all right, let's work backwards so you can make it an intentional choice, which is pretty empowering, versus just saying, well, it happens sometimes. We can be more intentional about what we're doing.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know John Berardi, you should. I'll just leave that right there. You should. And you touch in on something that's so important, in my opinion, and that is being intentional. What is because we find so many people, let's stick with Gym Pop Fat Loss for now, feel out of control. So what therein lies that power in saying, I choose not to have that donut versus I can't have that donut?
Oh, that's a great question. I really like that question. There are a couple different ways you can go with it. But I think one of the first and foremost is understanding you can totally have it. There's no moral, I'm good, I'm bad because I had this thing, right? We're aware, and I hope we're aware that there are no good and bad calories. They work in the body the same way. There's nothing special about anything. So I think the first thing is giving yourself unconditional permission. This is a weird thing for people because, some might say it's intuitive eating, and no, that couldn't be further from the truth. It's giving you this permission to ask yourself two questions. Question number one is, am I even hungry right now? and can I just save it for later? Like, I have full permission to eat this. Can I save it for later? Like, right? So if I see the donut, I'm not actually hungry. I look at the donut. I could just save it. I could take it. I could save it for later. I could have it with my lunch. If I plate the thing, I'm more likely to recognize I'm getting full. The other side of it is like, okay, will I even enjoy this right now? Right? Because let's go from the lens of someone who's like, all right, I really love Girl Scout cookies. Like, I love them. Like Snickerdoodles, my favorite thing in the world. All right, let's say that's the thing. And it's Girl Scout cookie season, so it is what it is. If you have like Girl Scout cookies and you crush a sleeve of Girl Scout cookies, chances are you're not enjoying it after like the second or third cookie, because chances are you're eating it so fast because you feel a little stressed out, a little guilty about it. You're not actually noticing how freaking good they are, what the memory is, right? Whatever's attached to it. So it's like, if you could answer the question, it's like, no, I'm actually not enjoying this right now. Okay, well, what's something I actually do enjoy? How can what's actually coming up that I'm well, I'm remembering, I used to get Girl Scout cookies all the time with my mother, and she, I haven't talked to her in a while. Well, what if I call her? What if I give her a call on the phone? That's probably a more productive way to deal with that feeling than crushing a sleeve of Oreos or crushing a sleeve of Girl Scout cookies, right? And it's not to say Girl Scout cookies aren't bad. They're delicious. It's us trying to shove away the things under the surface, trying to avoid that, when in actuality, calling your mom's going to allow you to like urge surf. It's going to allow you to experience that feeling and coexist with it, and then make a different choice. And because you're making a different choice, suddenly you're empowered versus thinking of it the other way around. So that's really like the big part of that. It's like, you got to answer those two questions for yourself. And you have to give yourself time to answer those questions. That's why staring at the food and asking yourself those questions is not going to work for you. So if you have a list of things you can go to, I can go for a walk. I could, a lot of my clients will listen to audiobooks. Some knit, some do puzzles, some will talk to a coworker. Like, there's just this like fine line of how you can get involved in what's happening now versus getting lost in your past thought or attachment to a thing. And I know that's deep. We don't usually talk about that stuff, but that's really a big part of where the intentional side of things come into play.
That was deep in one of the best ways I've ever heard that explained. In
Thank you.
my 16 years in this industry, that may be as good as I've ever heard. I know Victoria is listening, and she's a registered dietitian that specializes in disordered eating. So she wants to chime in on that one. My goodness. That was beautiful. And yes, Girl Scout cookies are amazing. And just to your point, I found Girl Scout cookies from last year in a friend's freezer and smashed the whole sleeve. And even just thinking about it with myself, who does have quite a bit of control, quite a bit of recognition of what I'm doing. After the second or third one, no, I'm just doing it.
Yeah.
And it's mindless.
Yeah. And I think that's, I think then it's easy for if I put myself in someone else's shoes, it causes this like cascade effect, right? There really is this cascade effect of like, I messed up, and then I might say, hey, it's okay if I curse. I tell a lot of my clients, they don't really care. They catch a case of the fuckets, and it just keeps going, right? So the example would be like, Super Bowl was yesterday. I hope everyone had a great time watching the game, whether you were just watching for the halftime show or watching because you like both teams, whatever it is. Chances are you enjoyed yourself. Like, there's nothing wrong if you did. What ends up being the problem is when you take that experience and be like, okay, well, clearly I just got to follow through on that experience the rest of the week. And then when you see the scale go up in another week, that's when you're like, oh, all right, well, now I've gone off the rails. What's the point? There's no turning back, right? So there are other things you can look at in that, like, are we being attached to the scale? Is that's what making our impulse decisions? Because that's never good. Are we able to like looking at it rationally? Like, are we able to look at a pen and paper? Oh, all right, well, I've been consistent Like, I've been consistent about like 85% of the month. All right, so one day off, that's really not going to mess with anything. Like, it's important to look at the facts, because they don't have emotions tied to them. Like, you're even if you were like 65% consistent, that doesn't make you an asshole. That doesn't make you a horrible parent. That doesn't make you any of those things. How you treat yourself makes you maybe one of those things. Like, how I choose to react from that makes me maybe more along the lines, right? It's really big to like just start to be able to look at it. Okay, well, my actions speak louder than one instance, like my total accumulation of things, right? It's not this thing where we're judged on one decision. So that's kind of how I try to look at that, or have clients start to look at that. And it's kind of scary in the beginning because it feels abstract, you know?
100%. And it's not that clear cut, go eat this, don't eat this, do eat this, that people think that they want and people think that they need, but they can Google that. And odds are they've done that a million times before and it did not serve them well.
Yeah.
And the thing is that, if I may, those Girl Scout cookies, to your point, your mom used to take you to go get Girl Scout cookies. So that may serve to take you back to a place where you felt safe, cared for, and loved. And you may be tying that emotion to that taste of that Girl Scout cookie. And I love how you said, cool, well, let's just recreate that whole experience and call my mama and do that. And just be mindful and make it be intentional. And that's so beautiful and so perfect. And to Victoria's point, if you drop your phone, you don't say screw it and stomp on the phone. You pick it up, clean it off. In my instance, I probably dropped it, in the toilet or something. and then you wipe it off and you put it away for safekeeping. An analogy I love is, if you get a flat tire, you don't slash the other 3 tires because you had one. Or if you stub your toe, you don't chop your foot off. Right? So, but it's understanding, again, to your point, so perfectly articulated, why am I doing this? And it's okay if I choose to do this. Just let me step back for a second and make it intentional. In the same way with my clients, we say vacation is a good thing. Working hard is a good thing. But typically we want to have our vacation planned and not just spur of the moment, I'm just not going to work anymore.
That's a good way. That's an interesting way to put that, right? And it's like even getting someone to the point where they can be okay with taking a random vacation. I mean, this is like a
right.
Maybe in this instance, the person has suddenly been like, all right, this job isn't serving me. I'm quitting this job, right? To get to that point, that person has to be really dialed into what's most important to them, right? Is making a boatload of money really important, or seeing their kids every morning and every night important, right? Maybe they're in a position where they can make that choice. And that's so cool if they can. Even if they can't, maybe they can be more intentional, like with their screen time, and then they're suddenly paying more attention to their kid. It's whatever the example is, because when you're aware of the thing that's important, it's like, okay, again, I'm going to go up on my calories, but I've been dialed in for the last 2 weeks. One day, one meal out, one Valentine's Day dinner with my loved one isn't going to change anything. It's your ability to go back and do the thing you need to do the next day, which is kind of scary, because it's like, but won't I just fall off I say going off track is a part of being on track. When you're trying to be perfect, you're just getting better at quitting, right? And I know Josh Hillis. It's the idea of we're pursuing excellence. We're not pursuing perfection. Excellence means you're practicing a skill. It means, and I'm quite frank with all of my clients, I say from the get-go, when they're onboarded, hey, you're going to fuck up, and I expect you to. And I also expect you to be productive with that fuck up. We're saying oh no, the world is so great. That doesn't fix anything. How are we going to stop the world from ending? Oh, I didn't think about it that way. Let's look at it from that point of view. So an example might be, maybe someone is always used to trying to hit 1,800 calories. they're always trying to hit one number. But maybe if you have a range, suddenly it's like, oh, right? Maybe your range is 1,600 to 2,200 calories. Like, that's a range. That means if you hit any of the numbers in between there, you're still going to be in a weekly deficit. That gives you more wiggle room. That gives you more freedom in a way, right? Because if we look on the scale of things, you have someone maybe someone is really good with hitting all three macros within a 5 to 10 gram range. But maybe they're also like a physique competitor. Maybe they're also someone getting ready for a movie, right? They're someone whose livelihood depends on them looking a specific way. That's just how I kind of put it, because I work with everyday average Joe people. And you can get the same results just tracking calorie range, protein, and fiber. Like, you'll be fine. You don't even have to hit all three, right? You could just hit your protein goal. You could just hit your calories plus or minus 100. Like, you could go on the scale of good, better, best with this. Best actually isn't always the sustainable thing. You have to find where you sit on the scale. And if you're always looking for the best of the best or the optimal thing, it's not always going to be practical, right? If I have a mom of 3 under the age of 7, and I'm telling her to hit protein, carbs, fat within 5 gram range, get 9 hours of sleep, make sure she's taking 12,000 steps a day, make sure, right, going to the gym 4 days a week, like, maybe one of those things they can do, but they can't do all of them. So what is the like bare ass minimum? What is the thing they can do when the house is on fire? One kid has strep throat, like their dog has eaten someone's socks. Like, what can they actually do, right? Versus what's going to be perfect in this non-existent reality that we've cooked up in our head. That Instagram likes to like cultivate, like the idea that you have to be absolutely perfect. There are no missed days. David Goggins, go hard, like all these things. This is like, I get it. And when I was 21, yeah, that was me. And it's not the thing that works time over time. The research points it out too. Like, that sort of thinking just doesn't work long term.
100%. Dead on. There's so many examples running through my head right now of this. And that is one thing, is the all or nothing inevitably ends up in nothing. And you don't so you're in Jersey, I'm in South Carolina. So let's say I'm driving up there to see you and Jimmy Nutrition, right? And am I going to think that I just screwed up this trip if I'm driving up there and don't pull off the side of the road to get a snack or to go pee or to do whatever? No, it's part of the trip. And so often, I think this was an implied task there, that, well, here's the perfect route. Okay, but there's construction on that route. Okay, but this one over here had a traffic jam, and so we need to redirect. And though it may seem like that route would take you an extra 35 minutes, it actually saved you an hour. And so that break, that being able to step off, it may seem like it delayed your fat loss goal for 3 days.
Yeah.
But it actually saved you 6 months because you didn't give up on yourself. And that principle of what is optimal, or what's optimal, is what works for you sustainably. I recently spoke about a client of mine who lost 25 pounds eating fast food 3 times a day. Now, some people may say that's bad coaching, but just switching. She wasn't willing to cook. She wasn't willing to track. She wasn't willing to do those things. However, she was willing to switch from getting a McGriddle to an Egg McMuffin. She was willing to switch from a double cheeseburger from Cookout to a grilled chicken sandwich from Chick-fil-A. Those massive changes built proof in her. And then she said, hey, what if I started cooking dinner? Do you think that would help? I said, I don't know. Are you willing to find out? It's now 6 years later. And not only has she lost 60 pounds, but she's kept it off. Because as we spoke about recently, America doesn't have a weight loss problem. Most Americans have lost a significant amount of weight, which is denoted by 25 pounds or more. However, within 2 years, 95% have regained it, often plus some. And that, in my opinion, I believe it's an identity problem. But it's also a perfection problem. And, you know, I'll step into a joke I like to say. People go, why won't you tell me what to do? Because I ain't your mama and I ain't Jesus. So, I mean, like, if we're going that route, like with my faith, like if this person was the only person to ever walk the face of the planet that was perfect, then do you think maybe striving for perfection, the one thing that's legitimately impossible, may be what's causing you stress and anxiety, and to go off the rails, but not just go off the rails, but to wreck the train off the edge of the Great Canyon?
Yeah. I think that's so interesting to hear it put that way. Like, there really hasn't been anyone who's perfect. And if you are someone who believes in higher powers, things of that nature, we all have a version of that in our life. I think it's important to understand that even the thing that is whatever that is for you, they still made mistakes. Like they weren't actually perfect, but it was their ability to own the mistake and be accountable for the mistake and keep going. Like that's truly the only way you make progress. Like, if you came to me and you were like, I want to learn the guitar, and I was like, cool, let's start with learning like what the strings are. You're like, fuck that, I want to be a jazz guitarist right now. I'd be like, well, you are out of your mind. I wouldn't say it that way. Maybe I would if we were friends. I'd be like, this is ridiculous. You're not going to do it that way. Well, same thing applies to like having blanket statements that everyone needs to do the same thing, right? We know at the core of it, like, the only way you lose weight is if you're in a calorie deficit, right? That we know that. But for some individuals, that might mean tracking calories. For other individuals, it might mean taking a break from tracking calories, right? For one person, it might mean being in a really big rapid fat loss phase in the beginning. And for another person, it might be like just a slight deficit. Because on paper, you're like, but that's not. Well, one person is like 450 pounds and the other person is like a 5'5", 125 pound woman. Like, why would I put them on a rep, right? You have to look at the whole person. There are all these different tools that someone has, and saying you have the perfect solution, one shows you're a little bit arrogant as a coach, because you can have the thing that maybe it worked for the first 20 clients, and then you get someone who's like, yeah, I have like, yeah, I'm allergic to X or Y foods. Yeah, I can't do this or that. Yeah, I actually just had ACL surgery. Yeah. And suddenly it's like, oh, wait, I've never dealt with any of these. And you have like all of these things. So it's like, you have to be open to being wrong, even as a coach, and own up to that. You don't necessarily have to say, I'm incredibly wrong, but you do have to say, you know what? This isn't working as well as I thought it would work. Let's see what we can actually do, or what's going to be more feasible for you right now, right? So is it like doing all this? Do we have to throw out the scale? Can we just use like measurements, progress photos? How's your sleep? Like there are all these different ways you can go about it. And unfortunately, nutrition is like, it's kind of like it's like a guesstimate. Like, you're guesstimating everything, right? There are a few signals where you'd be like, yeah, no, you're probably not accurately reporting. But for the most part, it's a lot of guess and check. That's what it is. Everything's an estimation. So to even say you have the perfect macros, that's a lie. So, you know, so there's a lot that goes into it. You know, it's interesting to talk about it too.
It's very fun to talk about it, especially with somebody, you know, the first time jamming, that it's like, wow, we're pretty like-minded, and this is how we get better. Went live with Adam Badger. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but you'd love him. And since then, we've just been back and forth and tossing these things back and forth and making ourselves better coaches. Because you're right, we are still guessing. Now, there's swags, there's strategic, wild, I'm not going to cuss right now, but behind the guesses, or scientific, but because with 16 years and formal education behind it, yes. But to your point about what's perfect on paper, for home, very rarely will somebody say, well, this is the best. For what? For whom? In regards to what? Like, there's a lot of follow-up questions. But to that point, by my understanding, socialism, communism would be perfect governments on paper, but I've yet to see them work.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of, it's almost like, and this was me, like my first year in the industry, I just went to as many seminars and workshops as I could possibly go to. Just wanted to get as educated as possible. But that didn't make me a good coach, right? It didn't. What made me be able to like work with a variety of people is that I just worked with a variety of people. That's what it is. It's not, you can have all the certifications, all the acronyms, all the things after your name, but unless you like actually work with another human being, you're not going to know. That's why it drives me nuts. Sometimes when coaches or individuals on social media will say, well, that's not true. X or Y way is the only way it works. And I'll just be like, you've never worked with someone who's over 300 pounds. You've actually never coached anyone who's truly struggled with managing their weight. Maybe you've worked with others who on the outside are ripped, but internally they've probably got some other stuff going on too. Maybe it's out of your scope. Maybe it's not. Maybe we're just turning a blind eye to a lot of things. So it's just a frustrating thing sometimes, because it's just like I want to be able to help as many people as I can. And then you're kind of like, well, or I could just focus on talking to the same person all the time. And if it's supposed to stick, then it sticks. It becomes like a sticky note. And it just, if you could say so, that's why I do a lot of silly, at this point now, I do a lot of silly sketches and like try to use humor, because one is disarming. Two, it shows like, yeah, I'm willing to, joke around and show that there's a human behind this. First, me being a robot saying, yep, you gotta hit this many grams of protein by the time it's this time, and if you don't hit that, like it's that might not register with anyone, So I don't know. It's kind of rambling there, but it's just
No, keep rambling. I mean,
yeah.
To your point, there are enough people out there just reciting the things, but it's, if we expect people to be honest and real with us, shouldn't we be honest and real? Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's the same reason why I'll make like a faith-based reference. Like, in no way am I pushing that on anyone else. It's just who I am. And so if that resonates with someone, awesome. If it doesn't, I don't care if you pray to a rock with a pink tutu on it. I'm just glad you believe in something. Right. So, and hopefully you believe in yourself. And that in lies a lot of the work that we end up having to do as well. For markers, and if you'll go in on this for a second, I would love to hear your take on it. I have a client, been working together for 2 months. They've been struggling for, not necessarily in regards to her, by the way, just in general. But the scale hasn't really moved. But her daughters now believe in her when she says, I'm going to make dinner. She's now not getting fast food every night of the week for her and her children. She's now teaching her children how to cook. She's now able to look at the muffins in the teacher's break room and say, you know what, I choose not to have that. Mm-hmm. She's now understanding that ice cream at night, what we got to, why do I keep doing this? Well, it's understandable. Everything you do all day, you're a mother, there's your children, you're a teacher, there's your kids, you're a coach, there's your students. That's your one comfort thing for you. But then she was finally able to realize that it's not actually comforting me if it's causing me guilt and shame. But let's work on that guilt and shame as well while we're at it. Let's just do all of that. Well, you're not going to tell me not to have ice cream? No, I'm not. No, I'm not. because I ain't your mama and I ain't Jesus. So it's those markers. And though the scale hasn't moved, this one simple question, if the scale never moved, would you go back to the way you were living before?
Mm,
And her answer
that's a
was
really,
absolutely not.
yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting thing, right? Because one, I think that's amazing. Two, I think it's hard for people sometimes to hear that and accept that as like a realistic answer, because a lot of times we tie like ourselves to one number on the scale, and that means that you will be fixed. Like I will be loved. I will love myself. Will you be able to do more things? Yeah, probably. You'll be able to go on hikes with your family. You'll be able to make it up the stairs without getting winded. You'll be able to do like all these different things. You'll be able to keep up with your grandkids. Maybe you can get up and down off the ground without worrying. Like so many benefits. So I'm not going to say there are no benefits to weight management. But what I will say is if you're going into it with the hope that it's going to fix you internally, it's going to be further from the truth. You have people who are in amazing shape and they are just a mess internally. And if we look at like markers, it's like, okay, the scale didn't move, but wait a minute. And this happened for me with a client. They just started with me. Scale really hasn't moved. I know that they're down inches though already. They're actually wearing like actual dress up nice clothes to work. They're not wearing like baggy clothes anymore. They're just dressing up for themselves. There's this level of and this like a lot of the moms I work with deal with this, where you show up for everyone else and you put yourself to the side. And then when it comes time to show up for yourself, you feel this level of we could differentiate between shame and guilt, but this level of, I'll say guilt, where they feel guilty for showing up for themselves because it's not helping someone else. But we already know that if I help myself, then I can show up for the other person. It's like the cup analogy, right? If I'm always like operating at 10% full and trying to pour myself out for other people, well, I don't have anything to pour out. But if I fill myself up, then I can spill that positive energy into the other areas of my life. I can learn to be a little more emotionally agile or flexible. They're all skills that you can learn. Nothing is unattainable in that regard, like emotionally. If you tell me you want to be an American Ninja Warrior and you're like 95 and you've never done anything physical in your life, I might say, yeah, maybe that's unattainable, but who knows? There are all these different levels of it. But when we look at guilt and shame, it's guilt is I know that there's something that I could have done differently. I could have done something differently. I feel bad because I know I could have made a different choice. Shame is I'm a bad person, right? We have to like that. That's the thing. Like you're not a bad person because you made a choice. Like there are so many people who have made horrible choices in their life, and then they suddenly start making different choices and become a better person. They've always been that. Yeah, me too. I know you're sober. I've been sober, so I am sober. So I mean, there are a lot of things you like learn along the way, and it's like yeah, no one's trying to save you, but at the same time, that doesn't mean you can't have a moment where you suddenly realize things can change. You're always like, I say this, and I do a lot of YouTube videos now, and the thing I say at the end of every video, you're always one day from getting back on track and one day from realizing how fucking amazing you are. Like you really are. You're one day away from realizing that. Today could actually be the day. But if we go into it and say like how horrible of a person we are because you were you were under on your protein goal and over on fat, it's horrible. I would never want that for someone, you know?
All of that. Literally all of that. Like my cup is now overflowing because of this conversation. It is so good. So good. And you're just phrasing this it's such a beautiful way. And we're saying the same things a lot. But maybe my voice hits one person, yours hits another. And that's the beautiful thing. And I love the way you articulated guilt versus shame. And may I add one word that may be selfish. A lot of times they feel selfish for taking time for themselves. And I'm going to tell you this with my whole heart. I want my mama to take time for herself. I want her to be happy. I want her to take care of herself because I want her around for a long, long time. So moms that are listening and that may listen later, it's not selfish because if you take care of yourself now, you can be there be there with them longer, and not just in body, but mentally and physically able to do the things that you want to do with them. It's not selfish. It's understandable. But I promise you it's not. And I promise you this, you are one day away. You are one decision away. And I'm going to add that you're worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can agree with that. I think it's like oftentimes I think the reason why someone might look at themselves as selfish for taking care of themselves is because self-care is often just looked at as taking a massage. I'm buying myself roses. I'm treating today as a treat yourself day. And the truth is like there are different types of self-care, right? There are different types of self-care, right? You could yes, the lavish things, the bubble bath, the rose petals on the bed, all of those things, those are in the fun form of self-care that we think about. But then you have the middle of the road self-care that's doing something that's challenging, building a chair, doing your workout, writing fiction, reading fiction, solving a Sudoku puzzle, learning a new language. That's really challenging and requires you to practice. But as a result, you're proud of yourself because you've crafted this thing. You've done something. But someone might not look at that as self-care. They might not look at those things as self-care. They might be like, oh. And then you have the far end of self-care, which is getting hard things done, like paying your taxes, having difficult conversations and setting boundaries. You're like, oh, I've been putting that task off for a long time. If I just do that, I'm going to feel a lot better, right? That's self-care. Who the fuck would call paying taxes self-care? It is self-care though, because it's one less thing you're worried about, So if we have that, again, if we have that spectrum of good, better, best, even when it comes to self-care, it's oh, I guess if I go for that walk, I'm going to not have so many thoughts floating in my head, and I'm probably going to be more present when I pick up my daughter from pre-K today. Maybe it's a go get cookie and talk kind of day. We could do that. It's very different than being I'm going to eat this cookie by myself. It's no, I'm going to share with my daughter, which means they're probably going to eat the whole thing and you're going to get one bite. That's just, it's if you look at it from that point of view, it's okay, yeah, that's more important. That's an important choice, to bring it back to being mindful of your choices.
Again, all of that. Yeah. And it is, to your point, yes, you're not getting any of that cookie at all. But self-care is such an interesting phrase. I don't want to go too sideways, but whatever. It is interesting how in our society, self-love, self-care is viewed as getting your nails done, getting your hair done, getting a massage, going for a movie day, getting the popcorn, taking you and the girls or you and the guys going to grab drinks in a charcuterie, i.e. overpriced Lunchable, out with your friends. But yet, in my opinion, those things are all self-care if balanced with consistent, true self-care at the core, which is reading, introspection, therapy, weight training, cardio, eating nourishing, healthy foods. Those are actually the deeper self-care. I think maybe we choose the other ones because they're instant, where whereas the other is typically viewed as a delayed gratification.
Mm.
Where if we use, I like to say this, think about somebody's dog, right? You got your dog and they're at home and it's been nasty and it's been rainy and you just didn't want to, or whatever it is, and you don't take them for a walk. What do? They start tearing up your socks, eating the dadgum baseboard, peeing on the floor. Why? Because they need to get the energy out somewhere and it's manifesting as anxiety. Why do we think we're any different? Like, anxiety is not actually a bad thing. Anxiety is a good thing. It's your brain telling you something's wrong, something needs to change. Please go do something about this.
Mhm.
The issue becomes when we sit in it too long. In the same way, insulin spikes can serve a very good purpose. We just probably shouldn't sit with one elevated for too long, right? Sleeping is a good thing. Probably shouldn't do it too long because you might miss work, right? Like, and all these, cortisol is a great thing in your body, just shouldn't probably stay elevated for too long. Anxiety is the exact same way. And in the same way, if you are exercising for self-care, but it takes over and you're gone for 3 hours a day, and now you're neglecting your family, now you are being selfish. So it's finding that balance, and back to your word, that optimal balance for you that will allow you to live the life you want to live and create the identity of the person that you want to become, and aligning those actions with that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the big take home, I think, from all of this.
There's a lot of take homes from all of this. Also, I did want to ask before we run, because we could talk, I think we could talk all day.
Yeah.
You gave your mom some really simple tips. I freaking love this, man. Mom was down 6 pounds in a couple weeks. A lot of people would say that's not fast enough. What did you tell your mom to do? And how is that going? I really want to hear about that.
Yeah, so I mean, my mom, she's awesome. She is someone who we would classify as someone who's like yo-yo dieted her life, and you know, the kind of she's also like a 3 or 4 time cancer survivor at this point. So like, the big thing for her is like my son. We have another kid arrive. She just wants to be able to keep up with them now, which is cool because who knew it? After like so many years of working in the industry, she follows me on social media now. She'll like text me and be like, "Oh, I tried this thing you said to do." But she actually asked me like, "What can I do? Like, I have this and that going on," and I was like, "All right, well, I know you know how to use a food scale. You've done it before. Let's just try to hit like a protein goal and a calorie range." She was like, "That's it?" I was like, "Yeah, I just want you to track as accurately possible for the next couple of days and just text me and tell me what it is." We saw that she was really under eating on protein. We saw that she was snacking a lot in the afternoon, evening because she was so hungry. And it was because like her breakfast was like 100 calories, most of it coming from carbs, and it wasn't very satiating. And I didn't. A lot of people think you gotta do 1 times your goal body weight for weight loss. Like, yes and no. If someone's currently eating like 50 grams of protein, and I suddenly tell them they need to eat 175 grams of protein, get out of your mind. Not gonna do it. But if someone's eating 50 grams of protein, and I tell them to hit 100 grams of protein, and then they hit 80 grams, then they hit 90 grams, and they can hit 100. Well, then you can also be like, yeah, there's no limit to how much protein you can eat. 100 is your bare minimum. Suddenly they're like, oh, wow, this is great. Yeah, so it's like hitting protein, hitting a calorie range instead of trying to hit one number. It's like some days you're going to be under, some days you're going to be over. This is still going to be your calorie range. And let's track your steps. She just ordered herself a step watch so she doesn't have to carry her phone with her everywhere. Yeah. And I was like, let's just hit 6,000 steps. I might say higher than that for certain individuals, but my mom has neuropathy in both feet from chemo. She's got arthritis in her knees. I'm not going to tell her to walk 10,000 steps a day. I'm going to say, hey, just get up, walk a little bit further, maybe use the elliptical in the morning, and let's just see where your steps are. Easy things to implement for her. She lives in a facility, like a community that has a gym. The gym is literally down the slope from her. She'd go there, do her elliptical, listen to whatever she wants to listen to, and then, on days when she has my son, when she picks him up from school, like today, like she's gonna get her steps in. It's like a 4-year-old little boy. Like, yeah, you're gonna get your steps in. So it's those small things. And now it's like, okay, let's look at adding 1 day of strength training. Let's look at it doesn't have to be all at once. If we stick with the same things for 4 weeks and they're working, there's no need that you have to change everything. You could just add one small thing. So that's really how I've been approaching this with my mom, and she's done great. She's even been like, wow, I have more energy. I was like, yeah. She's like, wow, my clothes fit a little better. I was like, yeah. She says, wow, I saw the scale go down, and then I saw it go up. I saw it go down. And I was like, yeah, averages. I don't care about normal days. She's like, oh, yeah. So I think a large part of it is also education, self-efficacy. Like if you're not educating your client so they can feel self-sufficient with certain things, they're not gonna want to stick with it because it feels like they constantly need hand-holding. There's this reward of, again, doing hard things. It's intrinsically motivating. That's why someone has 250 pounds to lose, well, let's get them to lose weight rapidly in the beginning so they have that motivation. And then you can inch the calories back up so you're still in a deficit. They're eating more, but you gave them that sudden push. You gave them that turbo boost, right? You gave them, you ran over the speed up emblem in Mario Kart. Now they're like, all right, let's go. Versus if you do like, all right, we're going to lose ½ pound a week. They're going to be, are you kidding me? It's going to take me 17 years to lose the weight I need to lose, right? So it's, you gotta weigh it out and see where we're going with it,
100%. And I love that you're doing that. I love that your mom is trusting you, because that can be hard.
Yeah.
Very. My parents think I don't know anything. Finally, my mom listened, and she's lost 35 pounds and kept it off.
Nice.
And gotten rid of the guilt and shame. Like, yeah, I had a cookie and it was delicious, and I'm not going to do that tomorrow, but yesterday it was wonderful. It's just, it's fantastic to hear.
Yeah.
It just, that story really resonated when you said it. And I just think it's because it is hardest with the people that have known us the longest, even though they know, like, why a random stranger will pay a good chunk of change when the people that have known us forever, like nobody in my family comes to me. They're like, hey, what did you think about this diet I just joined? I'm like,
yeah, I mean, it's kind of a running joke in my family because someone will come to a gathering or something and they'll be like, oh, I read this article, or, oh, this person said this. And I'd be like, guys, I've been telling you this since like 2014. All right. It's kind of just like, nah, I'll just say whatever. I'm just glad.
Great. I'm glad. If I can support you in any way, please let me know.
I'm glad Jennifer Aniston said this. Great. Let's have you do it. Wonderful. Why don't I look like her? Well, you're not her, but you probably feel better right now. And you're like, yeah.
I mean,
so it's a lot of that.
Yeah. And to be fair, I want to look like her. Like, are you kidding me? So,
yeah.
I mean, truly, if there is one small piece of advice you can leave with anybody that listens to this later, what would it be?
You really can't fuck this up. Like, you can't. You can't. The only way you mess any of this up is if you wake up and you're like, I'm not getting out of bed today. I'm not doing the bare minimum. If you get out of bed, there's a chance you could do everything perfectly, whatever that looks like. If you could get an extra walk in, you could drink an extra glass of water, you could turn the TV off 10 minutes earlier at night than you normally do. You could, like, these are like the small wins that you still add into the jar. And like we said, at the end of 365 days, that's a shit ton of marbles. So the only way you mess any of this up is if you quit altogether. Now, someone might say like, oh, so you mean like, I don't give up on my work? No, I just mean life in general. If you just wake up and show up, you have a chance to have the best day that you could. It's like when you don't want to go do the workout and your coach tells you just go do the warm-up, chances are you're going to end up doing the whole workout if you just give yourself 5 minutes into the warm-up. Same thing goes with the rest of your day. You just got to get up. So I think that has been most helpful for me when I was dealing with getting sober, when I was dealing with my bouts of depression. You just got to get up. You just got to put the 2 feet on the floor, and then may the chips fall where they may. You just got to get up, though, whatever that looks like for you, whatever type of body you're in, whatever you're identifying with right now, just get out of bed. If that's what you're doing, you're good.
It's beautiful. Truly.
Thank you.
That was truly beautiful. I'm inspired. And I don't know how anybody that listens to this in the future could disagree. We're not saying it's easy. We're saying it's simple, not easy. Mm-hmm. To that point, I'll give a shameless shout out to Adam Bornstein. You Can't Screw This Up. Phenomenal book, phenomenal coach. Seems to be a great person, but he's right. You can't screw this up, and you're worth it. You're worth putting one foot in front of the other. And even if you have to put one foot in front of the one, take a breather and put the next foot forward. What's the right? What's the right? Yeah. Chris, where can they find you, brother?
Folks, I hang out here on Instagram at Coach Chris, at coach.Chris McMahon. You can also check out my website, chris-mcmahon.com. Got a ton of articles on there. I think I have like a free 52 weeks of metabolic workouts on there, so you can download that for yourself. My YouTube, I have new videos coming out every week tackling nutrition and fitness. And yeah, that's where I'm pretty much active on those places consistently. Sometimes TikTok, but sometimes Twitter, not really. Threads, no. So you can just find me here. It's probably the easiest.
100%. Well, this will be up on YouTube. We'll have you tagged. I'll backlink this so anybody can find him. It'll be clickable to his YouTube link. I'll also put his Instagram in there. Chris, thank you. This was very impromptu. We made this happen today. And I think it was absolutely priceless. Remember, can't screw this up.
Cannot. Thanks so much, man.